Hey, what's going on, family? It's your boy JB Direct, and thank you for tuning in for another episode of Reading with the Culture. Reading with the Culture! What's wrong with your boy, bruh? I don't know. Anyway, you already. It's your boy JB Direct. I'm back in full effect. This is episode 1. Thanks for all of you joining us for the first time. Thank you for all of you who are sticking from the pilot and you heard something and you felt it and you was like, you know what, I'm gonna listen to this guy because this guy's saying some stuff or he's reading some stuff, or you know what, I'm just gonna watch him fail. Because you know, I am pretty new into the podcasting space. I have done some things with music before, a little bit of production here and there, but this is a new venture for me. So again, whether you're here for the love or the hate, or just to watch the show crash and burn, I appreciate you, and I'll take your comments, your likes. Please subscribe on all platforms at RWTCULTURE on all platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, YouTube, name it all. You'll find us there at RWT Culture. Just real quick, the Reading with the Culture podcast is a small online book club for our culture, but not limited to our culture, and we try to bring you updates weekly. Our purpose is to expand the minds of our listeners and bring back fun and joy of actually picking up a book and gaining some knowledge. We know that we suck now as a podcast, but given some time and some feedback from our listeners, i.e. you, we know we'll get better. We know that this is just the beginning. Like I said, we only had a pilot. This is episode 1, and we're about to dive in to our first book, which is The Art and Science of Respect. The Art and Science of Respect. It's a memoir written by James Prince with the help of Jasmine D. Waters, published by In the Water Publishing. Following this will be The Mamba Mentality, How I Play, by the late, great Kobe Bryant, and Becoming Michelle Obama, rounding out our 3 autobiographies for this theme. So if you haven't read The Art and Science of Respect, or you feel like by the time I get through this series, you wouldn't have had the time to read it and you want to go ahead and get a jump on the next 2 books, I would suggest starting now. I already finished The Art and Science of Respect, and I'm working through The Mamba Mentality as we speak. And I would definitely love if you guys could be a part of this journey with me. So Mr. James Prince. Raised in Houston's Fifth Ward in a single parent household, in the ghetto like most of our black and brown children today, you know? His story starts out similar to yours or mine, but where he ends up, only God could have got him there. I overheard parts of his story during his interview with The Breakfast Club on Power 105.1 FM at the end of 2020. Probably somewhere around September, October, November. I'm the type of person that lives under a rock or grew up under a rock at least. So a lot of the times when somebody's being interviewed by The Breakfast Club or Vlad TV or Lip Service or the Hip Hop Uncensored podcast, there's just so many people that are in the background that do so many things that you have no idea of who actually does what until you hear them in an interview or see them receive an award and you hear, the accolades attached to the person and you're like, wow, that person did that. So to me, James Prince is definitely one of those people. Under his resume, Prince boasts some of the most successful stars and athletes of my time. Oh, really? His portfolio features managing undefeated champs like Floyd Mayweather and Andre Ward, to managing and discovering music icons such as Yuck Mouth, the Underground Kings consisting of Bun B and Pimp C, the Ghetto Boys consisting of Bushwick Bill, Scarface, and Willie D. And essentially, the reason why we're here, he's a part of the biggest star on hip-hop stage currently, Drake's story. Drake? Drake? Wheelchair Jimmy? Yes, the sixth god, Mr. OVO himself, Aubrey Graham. Once I heard he was connected to Drake, I started scratching my head. The only time I might have heard of James Prince before this interview was probably related to squashing some beef between artists in the South, because he does hold that amount of weight, which I didn't know at the time, but soon came to discover. I also overheard that he started one of the most profitable independent record labels back in 1986, which were hard enough to get off the ground, but even harder to sustain and turn a profit, especially during that time. All of that was more than enough to make me want to understand how a machine like that works. Then they mentioned the art and science of respect. The art and science of respect? That do sound type tough though. That's what I said. Anyway, I was intrigued just on the title alone. So for the next 2 to 4 episodes of Reading with the Culture, we're going to be doing a deep dive into the book. And no, I won't be reading it to you or reading word for word, but we just going to explore some of the concepts and some of the gems that we can mine out of this one. I also wanted to get this book to gain some insight into a highly developed, successful businessman's mind. He's the type of person, like many successful people, that understand that ownership is one of the first steps to freedom. Not that you can't own things with credit, but until you've paid off that credit or that debt, you don't really fully own it. Also, going the independent route is pretty much against the grain. But if you're determined and you dig in your heels, after enough failures, you will find success. With that being said, let's jump in. The foreword is written by Drake. Drake starts off by saying that no one becomes great on their own. Culturally, we should already know that because it takes a village to raise a child. We don't always get the village's help, but that'll be a story from another book. Moving on. Many times we could achieve this, but the crab in the barrel mentality prevents us from moving forward in unity. So in the foreword, Drake lists a few qualities and tips, a few one-on-one conversations that he's had with Jay Prince in his early years that set him up and kept him on track to being as successful as he is today. He also retells the story of how uh, Jazz Prince, James Prince's third son, I believe, found Drake on MySpace, reached out to him, brought him to Houston, and kept badgering Lil Wayne and his father about how Drake is going to be the next new movement, which at the time nobody believed. But clearly, years later, my son been running the boards for at least 10 years. Running? That boy killing. Correction, killing. But Drake does let us know that he is close enough to James Prince to call him Pops. He calls Jazz Prince, Junior Prince, Baby J, which are Prince's other children, he calls them his brothers. So therefore, he says he feels comfortable calling, James Prince Pops. So right there we see, the relationship between Drake and the Prince family, how it developed and that support that is driving, that's the type of support, that's behind a machine like Drake. Just some of. He then goes on to end it out by expressing his appreciation by the movement created by James Prince. He recalls how, back in that time, there was only really an East Coast or a West Coast. And because of somebody like James Prince, we now have like a third coast, or at the time he helped develop that third coast. The same way how Drake has done that same type of movement for the North, Canada, being based out of Toronto. And just like Drake is doing it for Toronto, James Prince has done it for Houston. Then this forward is followed by a preface written by Mr. J. Prince himself. In it, listing some of the things we've already spoke about, but just quickly going through like his beliefs in God, his successes with Drake, Andre Ward, Floyd Mayweather, and the start of Rap-A-Lot Records, things with his family and friends, just like quickly highlighting some of the things that we're going to go into detail in the book. And the preface ends with this paragraph. In hindsight, most people could never have made the decisions I've made, but I challenge you to try and understand them. Everything I did for my family and the Fifth Ward. Whether you're from Houston, Chicago, Toronto, or anywhere else, there's a Fifth Ward in every city, in every country, all over this world. So before I let you go, we do have a few house announcements. First, I'd like to thank all of you, anyone who's still here at this point, at the end of the podcast. I definitely appreciate your time. I hope that you take the time to like, share, subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend. Let them know what's going on here, especially if you like what's going on. We are on Facebook, Twitter. We are also on YouTube at RWT Culture. Again, that's RWT CULTURE. Although this is a podcast, it's also a book club. So if you're reading along or reading ahead and you'd like to contribute, please feel free to do so on any of our social media pages. And with that being said, we want to give shout outs and recognize Millennial Media LLC. They designed our logo for Reading with the Culture and did a damn good job at it too. Thank you, ladies. We'd also like to shout out Red Bottom Studios. Thank you for taking the time to teach me some of those skills, because I probably wouldn't be able to do this podcast without them. And I was able to use one of the beats we made for this episode, so that's cool. So this is the part of the podcast where I remind you that you can pick your friends, you can pick your nose, but ain't nothing wrong with picking up a good book every now and then. Peace, love, and guidance, family. The Reading with the Culture podcast is an independent podcast sponsored by no one yet, but we will be.